What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Soulscast, episode number 6. I am one of your hosts, Jake Landis, and with me, as always, Mr. Pursueth himself, Bryce Gardner.
What's up, guys?
Thanks for being with me today, sir.
Anytime.
That's right. All right, guys. So, this week on Soulscast, we are going to be talking about our perfect Souls game. Basically, what we want out of a Souls type game and what we're seeing from other developers since the creation of Demon Souls and the Souls like game genre, if you will. But before we get into that, I wanted to go ahead and let you guys know about halfway through the show, we're doing a thing called Clip of the Week where we feature, so far, one of our clips from Invasions or PvP or whatever. And we just feature one of those clips every week. There is an email in the description. If one of you guys would like to send in a clip and get featured on Clip of the Week here on Soulscast, feel free to do so. But yeah, go ahead and getting right into it, man.
Let's do it.
What for you? I mean, I told you we've talked about what the subject of the podcast is going to be.
Yeah.
We've known for a couple days now, but I really haven't heard from you what your perfect Souls game is, like, or what you would want out. If you could have your perfect Souls game, like the best possible game that you can think of, what would it be like for you?
The first thing that came to mind when I started thinking about what I would want to do or what would make the perfect Souls game for me, or like what are the things I like and dislike the most about the Souls series. They do a good job of making replayability a thing that is not mandatory, but almost, especially in the later games, New Game Plus and all of that is... New Game Plus needs to be a focus.
Well, okay, but also, as far as what you want out of the game, I mean, to get everything out of, like, say, Dark Souls 3, you have to play it 4 different times.
Yeah, and I feel
it's
that.
Like...
But,
so replayability almost is mandatory at this point.
Yeah, but I'm thinking of, like,
as far as
when you're going through and you're playing through the games multiple times, what is a little bit redundant. And I love Dark Souls 1. I'm with most of the community and feeling that it's probably the toughest of all the games. Now, after playing all of them extensively, Dark Souls 1 is definitely still the toughest to me.
Yeah, me too.
Running back and forth everywhere in Dark Souls 1 is rough. But... what they did really well with that, and this is one of the key things I'd like to have in my perfect Souls game, is I want to be able to do, like in Dark Souls 1, if you want to, go fight later game bosses right away. Like, you have a limited availability of that in Dark Souls 3. Like, it's basically, you can do it, but it's all kind of like, you have to beat one specific boss, and then you can go fight all these other ones. You know what I mean? Like, you have to beat the dancer. And that's cool.
Which is a later game boss, I would say.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. But what I think would be cool, and for me, is start out without fast travel.
Sure.
I would also like to be able to level up at any bonfire.
Sure.
I think that's like a lore-based thing, though. Like, you can't level up at the bonfires because you need that segue of a firekeeper to be able to do it because the flame's fading. Yeah. And I would say in every game, the flame has gotten farther from the beginning.
But okay, but taking it back a little bit, not Dark Souls.
Not Dark Souls 1.
This isn't. I'm saying like
it's just a Souls-like game. For me, it would still be like Dark Souls. It would still be like a medieval dark fantasy. That's my favorite setting.
But we already have that.
Yeah.
Like, so if you want like something different that we haven't seen yet, like what new territory would you hope to see the genre explore?
Well, maybe get a little less cryptic, just a little bit less cryptic. Put us in a world that's functioning, but with multiple factions and multiple zones. And then give yourself the option to end as yourself or like siding with all 3 different zones. But make the process of getting in good with
and that could tie
the leaders of those zones.
That could tie into like PvP, and there could be like quest things that you do, like side optional things.
I would definitely like that. I enjoy the medieval setting. It doesn't have to be so dark. It doesn't have to be so grim. I don't have to be fighting zombies. Like, I
Yeah.
wouldn't mind fighting
Other knights that were like conscious and like had like
obviously you have the options for crazed villagers or
which we've seen a
things
million
like
times.
we've seen in like Oblivion where gates of hell are opening up and you're still getting crazy shit. Like it's nice to have that one crazy level where you get to fight the big badass monsters.
Right.
But it doesn't always have to be like a plague or
like it could just be
grim.
It could just be that this is an opposing faction.
Because if we're talking about this,
I'm of a faction, they're of a faction, and if we see each other, we're at war. So it makes sense that we fight.
I don't want everyone to start like to pick your faction right off the bat, and then you're set into the story. I want it to be something where you're a character. And you could grow up in either one, but you have options to go to all of them.
You start out, and kind of almost like in Skyrim, where like you kind of just can go anywhere.
Obviously, there probably needs to be some calamity that's happening with the world, but everyone's trying to deal with it in different ways.
There's like the different guilds, and there was like the Stormcloaks and the.
Yeah, but I like open world. I guess like an open world would be cool. Like if we had. You play like Skyrim and Oblivion and all those games. They're all great, the first time through. And then I play them once, I do pretty much everything, and then I never play them again.
Yeah.
And
it's because,
And if we had the Dark Souls combat, because that's what it always boils down to. Like, I already have my perfect, like, what's your ideal Dark Souls combat? Like, maybe somewhere in between Dark Souls 2 and Dark Souls 3. Maybe slow it down a little bit from Dark Souls 3 and remove some of the tracking.
Right.
If they did that, it would keep me happier. I still love Dark Souls 3. I still have a lot of time to put into it before I'll probably go back and start playing the other games again here and there.
Yeah.
But the tracking is... It's good and bad. You learn to play with it and you learn to adapt to it, but I know when I go back to those other games, it's going to be a weird adjustment.
Sure.
So, I don't know. If we were going to do something different than Dark Souls, but for my perfect Souls-like game, it would be an open world... maybe with a little bit more of a fleshed out story. Not something that not a story where you're heavily affected by all these events of the past, but that's all vague. Maybe you know exactly what happened in the past and why you're there.
Right.
But then you have options on what you can do and how you can deal with it.
Sure.
But I don't want a ton of video cutscenes. I don't even want a ton of dialogue. I still want it to be... I want it to be on that
essence.
Deepness, and that deep level of you have to search for it to do that. And I'm not really sure how you pull that off.
Right.
I mean, maybe you have to find this NPC under the right proper chain of events, and then you save his life, and then he's willing to help you get into something or whatever. I don't know. I'm not a game designer.
I totally see where you're coming from, and honestly, like, and I wouldn't want it to be an exact like trademark game, but like something with the tone and seriousness of like Game of Thrones, but it's like its own lore, but it's like that level of seriousness and like.
Yeah.
That kind of way where there is like
want a Game of Thrones Dark
No.
Souls game
I'm not saying like
an
actual trademark, but I'm saying like with that same tone of seriousness and gravitas, but with rich lore, but it's not like super crazy dark fantasy, crazy dragons flying everywhere all the time. It's more like grounded in reality. Like more often than not, you're fighting other sane humans, but it's for like legitimate reasons, and there are opposing factions, and kind of like in Skyrim, you would start and you kind of go and you talk to people and you see the opportunity to join these factions, but you don't necessarily have to, and you can kind of be a free agent and roam around, kind of get a feel for the land and kind of see what you want to do from there.
Something else that I think would be cool and to see included in something like this if we were playing a game like this. Now, this would take a lot of resources, and most of the time, large-scale warfare in games is hard to do.
Yeah.
But it would be cool if there were certain things that you had to do with other people.
Yeah.
Like, in order to complete the game, you have to have 10 people where it kind of normalizes your levels a little bit or whatever. But you meet up and you and a bunch of NPCs fight a bunch of other NPCs.
Or like other real 30, players.
But still have like the Dark Souls combat, but maybe some siege engines. Maybe a couple people that can fly around on a dragon or something like that.
Or
but everyone has to work together. That would be really fucking cool. But
I think it would be cool. That sounds awesome, and also I think it would be cool, like almost not quite, but almost like an MMO. Not like all the way that way, but a little bit, because honestly, like
want it to be a Souls style game.
We were playing Souls last night, and at one point in time, I think we had like 6 or 7 people in our world, you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And there was that much stuff going on. Like there was,
And it wasn't slowing down.
it seemed like there were people just coming out of the woodwork at us. It was awesome.
Yeah.
So it's like definitely possible to do that, but I think it would be really cool in a game like that too to see a more well-defined, like not almost a more well-defined class system, but you don't necessarily pick your class. You just build your character the way you want and like have the option to respec. But it's like, and that's kind of the way it is in Souls too. But like,
I really like the level up system. I like the D&D style level up system in
I do
Souls.
too.
I wouldn't want to see that changed
no.
anytime
I'm not
soon.
saying I'm not saying
really
that
like
change, but I mean like, you need a healer for this group thing. You need someone who has faith stuff so they can heal
Yeah.
you. You need someone who can tank more
Maybe
hits.
instead
you
of like
need
saying
a buffer
you need
guy.
a healer, saying you need someone that at least has this much faith. Someone.
That's
that
what
at
I'm
least
saying.
yeah.
Like you need a healer. It would still be you. They're not the well-defined classes, but you pick like, okay, I'm going to be a faith character. That means I'm going to have heals, and that means I'm going to be able to support a party.
Yeah.
Or you can say I'm a rogue character and I can do high critical damage.
Yeah,
but if
for
I'm in a
sure.
one-on-one fight with a tank, it's going to be hard for me to be able to take down that tank by myself because
Yeah.
they're going to be able to because you're going to be squishy.
And that's
you know what I mean?
all like ideal, and that's from like a very PvP focused standpoint. But I still, for the game to be good, I need it to have a good story, but I need it to not be the like. It's hard for me to get into certain games where your character's made for you and you go right in. Like,
Yeah.
I think some of the only games that have been able to captivate me with the story that are kind of like that are maybe like the Witcher games. Or
Witcher
like,
is so good.
like Fallout and stuff like that, or things that I can get into. But most of the time, like if I can't make my character however I want it to be, however I want it to look, and equip it with a bunch of different stuff and have a lot of options in the world, if I can't do that,
It's hard for you to
it's really hard for
immerse
me
yourself.
to like
I agree.
get a lot of game time or
I'm
played time.
I'm like that as well. So
And so that's very important to me for
so do you have any
Souls-like
like
game, you know?
do you have any finishing thoughts on your
I could summarize it. Big key things for me to have a good Souls-like game. I like the option to fast travel. Don't give it to me right away. If I'm good and I know how to beat the game or I know where it's at, give me the option to go make that the first thing I do if I want to.
and put
but
some
make
effort
it hard.
into it? Yeah.
Make it hard. That's cool. I really like that.
I think that would be cool,
because
too.
It's
Forces exploration
yeah,
too.
and maybe some people that might just be what they do the first time they play because
Yeah.
they don't know better, you know.
Yeah, or it's like it just naturally comes kind of later in game, but kind of like in Dark Souls 1, but I think for
Yeah.
me to be ideal, like you get it when you have like less than like a third of the game left in Dark Souls 1, I feel like, or maybe right at like a third of the game
Yeah,
left.
if you don't count all the DLC and
it's
stuff,
a little
yeah,
it's a little bit late when you get it. I would get it just a little bit earlier
Yeah.
than that, maybe closer to halfway or like once you're a third of the way through the game, then maybe you get it. But you still
Yeah.
have to discover new locations
Because
to
there's
unlock.
times when it's, even though all the shortcuts are great, there's times when you have to run everywhere and it's kind of annoying. And in some ways, I like having the up and down build path
Yeah.
of DS1. But at the end of the day, for the real scale that I wanted of a game like this, it's almost better to have a central pillar, but have a lot of things branching out around
Right.
it too. And maybe some of those, build up and
branch
down.
and
depending.
connect. Totally.
So that stuff is really important. Just like having options as places to go is great.
So for you, you just kind of want to refine the Souls, like you want it to be similar enough to Souls, right?
Yeah, I want it
So-
to be very hyper similar, but maybe just bigger
So okay, so
and a little more exploration based and a little less boss based. Like it
Sure.
would be cool if there was like like when you're playing Skyrim and there's like all these different kinds of dungeons and stuff that you go into.
yeah,
I want to have that. Like you get more excited to fight new enemy types sometimes that are just, you'll see multiple of them throughout a dungeon, but it's like, whoa, I never saw one of these until
Yeah.
you get there. Than you do with some of the bosses. I want both of that.
sure.
I like that a lot, and that would be amazing.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it doesn't even really need to be high fantasy. If I had freaking lightsabers and I could do it, it'd be
Right.
cool. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
it's just, I need that combat and I need that lore presentation. I need the FromSoft presentation value on that lore.
Totally,
And
where
I
it's-
need it to be deep.
It doesn't just blast like everything right in your face.
Yeah.
It's like I like the way they do it, where when you get into those games, it's like this world has been around and things have been happening long before you stepped in this game, and things are going to be happening and be around long after you're done with this game. And they do a really good job of making you feel like this is like obviously in Dark Souls, it's very much like you walk into set pieces where enemies are arranged in patterns and stuff like that. And for the most part, aside from them moving around, it's the same enemies every time. But it's still the way the lore is presented. It's presented in such a way that it's like...
It makes sense.
This has been going on, and this is bigger than you, and this is bigger than your character. And we're going to let you know, like, you're going to witness things and hear things that you're not even going to understand because it's not really that important that you do.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to understand because this is bigger than you.
Exactly, and I like
and
that.
They do a really good job of that.
Even simple things like, I'm in a poison zone. Why am I in a poison zone? If you dig into the lore, it's almost always because you're close to the bed of chaos or something went down way before you even got there and you're dealing with the repercussions, you know?
Yeah, totally. And
I like that.
Yeah, and because I don't like the fact that it's like, here's the fire zone, here's the ice zone, here's the blah, blah, blah. Like, it's like...
It was cool in the Ocarina of Time and old Zelda
right,
games
and but
like
now that trope is kind of getting driven in the ground, and honestly, I think that Dark Souls 3 did a fantastic job of, like, yeah, there are poisony zones, and yeah, there's an icy zone, but it's not like they don't just run through here's the poison zone, here's the fire zone, here's an ice zone, here's another force zone. Here, like, they kind of blend them together in such a way that it masks the different, like, status effects that are connected with each zone, and it plays into the lore.
See more of the snow in the DLC. The Boreal Valley does not seem like it was totally fleshed out.
I think that so far there are 2 confirmed DLC packs for Dark Souls 3.
Yeah.
I think that we're gonna see some more Boreal Valley stuff.
Yeah.
Because I do think there is more going on there because it's Ithiel of the Boreal Valley. It's not saying that is the entire Boreal Valley. And also, like, to introduce a whole new status effect with Frostbite, it didn't seem very consequential. And I think that they're gonna do more with that.
Yeah, maybe some spells that have the frost.
It didn't seem that consequential, man. Like, I haven't run into anyone using it in PvP in any sort of effective way.
I know the Dragon Slayer armor is weak to frost. That's about the only thing I know.
That's interesting.
But
that is an interesting lore note.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, that game sounds awesome. And the thing is, hopefully we'll see something like that soon.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? With all these Souls-like games that are coming out. That's something I kind of wanted to touch on before we get to Clip of the Week. So we've been talking about our perfect Souls game and what we would want from a Souls game.
Yeah, which we still have to get some of your opinions on what.
Sure, and we're gonna get into that after Clip of the Week. But, like, just to give you guys the rundown so far, like, we've had Lords of the Fallen, Neo's coming out, Salt and Sanctuary, Dark Mouse, Eider. Then Demon Souls, Dark Souls 2, Dark Souls 3, Bloodborne, and then Necropolis. And then there are several more.
I'm stoked for Necropolis.
There are several more Souls-like games on the way out this year as well. And it seems like this genre is exploding. And I think that the success of the Dark Souls series is teaching game developers a little something about difficulty in games and hand-holding in games. And, like, the whole, like, go here, slay 5 wolves, and get a return and turn in the quest, and now you got XP, and now do a similar thing again. And it's like, okay, like, that's cool, and there's a time and a place for that kind of game.
Those games should still be around.
Totally. But I think that we were just kind of inundated with those kind of games for a very long time.
You can't develop games as if there's one audience to develop for.
No. And then I think that's what people have been doing. And I think that's what was going on. I was a little bit of stagnation in the market where it was like, and, you know, I think this game is an utter masterpiece, but The Witcher 3, like, that game is the pinnacle of what is possible, I think, in like, video games. Like, the sheer size and detail and beauty of that world is unparalleled in video games today, just flat out. Obviously, that game doesn't, and even the combat's good, but it doesn't have any sort of PvP or online mechanic, which is fine. But I do wish that it had a little tinge of Souls to it, where, like, I wish I could see my stamina bar. I wish I had a stamina bar. I wish I could. I wish there were different ways to go about combat rather than attack roll, attack roll, or, you know what I mean. Yeah. And there is magic
or else
in
you
that
could
game.
make your own character.
Yeah,
It
and
didn't have to be Geralt.
I think we'll see that.
Yeah.
I think that's going to happen for sure. I think without a doubt that will happen.
Yeah.
But it's like, and that is the kind of game where it's like all these icons, like go here, fetch this, do that. But which is awesome, but I wish it would allow for a little bit more exploration,
Yeah,
a little bit more fun just from the pure gameplay.
Yeah.
Which is what Dark Souls is.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good. But with that, guys, we have reached the halfway point, and we're going to go ahead and toss it over to Clip of the Week. Enjoy.
Gotcha, bitch.
All right. I hope you guys enjoyed the Clip of the Week. But getting back into it, I'm gonna take you on a stroll.
Let's do it.
I'm gonna take you on a stroll here through my perfect Souls game, and so obviously I've talked about Armored Souls, the idea that the FromSoft team would take the Armored Core franchise and meld that into the Souls formula.
Yeah.
I think that would be amazing. I've talked about that a little bit here and there. I'm gonna go glaze over a couple little points of that, but then I have another thing. So in an Armored Souls game, right, you have melee, right? You can have you could have beam swords, you could have
Shields even.
you have shields, you could have giant axes that your mechs wield and shit like that. And you could have more armored mechs. You would get different pieces and you would have a home base that you would take your resources and either upgrade or buy different pieces, or you defeat other mechs and you can kind of scavenge off their bodies.
Yeah.
And then you could build super heavy mechs that were high in defense but move slower, or you could build super smaller mechs that have boosters on the sides that you could do these dodge thrusts, kind of the quick step mechanic in Dark Souls 3, but it would be it would have boosters and you'd be dodging around, and you would have smaller weapons but then they would deal less damage, but you'd be really quick. You could also have projectiles it would be very similar to how spells and stuff work in Dark Souls right now. You have homing crystal soul mass, which is these things that hover above you that you get close enough and they home in on people. That exact same concept could work with missiles.
Yeah.
If you had missiles on your shoulders,
For
you
sure.
could have them prepped and they open or something like that, and then you get close enough and
Yep.
and it shoots missiles, and then they'd be dodging around. I've thought about this idea a lot, and I think the biggest obstacle that a team making that game would encounter would be level design, because if you're operating giant mechs, assuming they even did it with giant mechs, because you could do this same idea and make it with more humanoid sized mech suits.
Yeah.
Honestly, in a futuristic setting, it could be
Yeah.
a dystopian futuristic setting with it wouldn't have to be crazed hollows or whatever, but it could just be a war scenario, or you're in a war-torn country in the middle of battles and stuff like that. So I've talked about that idea. God, that would be, I would literally flip out if they announced Armored Souls. I would shit myself. I would freak out.
I don't even think they would call it Armored Souls.
I don't think they would, but I'm
just that idea.
Man,
Yeah.
but if they did call it Armored Souls, oh my god!
Yeah.
Say at E3, it just comes up and it's just FromSoft, and there's just Armored Souls. I would shit. I would never. I think I would be more excited for that game than I've ever been excited for a game in my entire life.
No. Yeah.
But so that's a cool idea. I hope that's a game that is technically possible to see.
What do you think the experience points would be called in that game? In all the Souls games or
The
Bloodborne?
XP?
Yeah.
I don't think it would be called what? Oh, because of Soul, it's called
in
Souls.
Souls it's Souls, or Demon Souls it's Souls, and Bloodborne it's Blood Echoes. I don't know.
Blood Echoes was the dumbest name for a thing ever. So
Yeah, I don't know.
they could call them
me, really.
They could call them bolts or gears, or they could call them
Yeah.
they could just have an XP bar for all I care. You know what I mean? I don't know. But okay,
Yeah.
so that's a cool idea. I would love to see that. That would be fucking amazing. But my other idea is kind of similar to yours, except I would really, really like to see like a Souls game, but it would be a totally different tone, and it would be like an anime. It would be okay. So I would want all the cutscene, any cutscene or anything that would happen. I would be so happy if it literally wasn't even in game, like characters like talking like in the same in game. If it like cut to like an anime like art style of just like pages, and then they had words, or they're like talked like in like animation, and then it cuts back to the actual gameplay, and then it's like very much like Souls, but it would be like you would have your characters would be very like anime,
Hand drawn looking almost, or like
I mean, I don't
pixel
even,
shaded.
not
Maybe.
necessarily pixel shaded. Like I would want it to look good. I would want it to. I wouldn't want it to be like a down resed anything. It doesn't need to be like a Zelda Wind Waker or like anything like that. It could have the graphical fidelity of Dark Souls 3, but just
Final
with
Fantasy 10
but
style.
like Final
almost.
Fantasy,
Or not 10, 15.
Yeah, kind of, but except
similar.
less boy bandy. But like,
Yeah, it's still gonna be good. I hope.
I think so too. But yeah, like so, like you gotta give your character crazy anime hair. You would pick up different pieces of gear that would make your character look cool in different ways. There would still be heavier stuff and lighter stuff and heavier weapons and lighter weapons. And it would be like an anime storyline where like, it wouldn't have to be this like super like. It could be dark, but it could also be less dark, and it could have like different branching story paths where you can side, like you were saying, like side with different factions, and it would give you like different dialogues and stuff like that. There are these games that I played back in the day that I should have looked it up, because I honestly didn't even realize the similarity until now. But I played these like samurai games for like, it was like for PS2, I think. Or maybe 360, but like
Onimusha?
No, not Onimusha, but it was like either at the beginning of the 360's life cycle or at the end of the PS2 life cycle, where you were like a samurai, and you were in this town, and like the camera angle was kind of like set for each area, so you would walk into an area and it would be like a town street.
That sounds familiar.
And
to
you
me.
would walk through, and it had like decent graphics for the time and all this stuff. But there were characters you talked to, and you would go into new areas, and depending on the choices you made, you would go in there, and there would be like different people in this area. There would be like all these other rival samurais, and you had to like fight them. And it was kind of like a Dark Souls-ish kind of combat system, but like. Yeah. But I would want it to kind of be like Dark Souls, where it's behind the camera with the stamina bar, all the stuff, options for like magic and stuff like that. But I would want it to have this like really cool like artistic style to it. So where like when you watch anime and you see like the combat of like any of these shows really, where it's just like super dramatic and like stylized, and I think that would be really awesome. Like you could have a bigger character that like kind of like has weight to their steps and weight to their swings, or you could have like a character who's like jumping around and
same
really,
idea. That's
really
like the biggest
agile
thing. Having the difference in classes.
Yeah, and the thing is, you can do that.
We also
like,
talked about this like off camera about how important it is not to have a glitter trail.
Yeah, yeah. I
don't tell me where to go.
I don't want it to be this like go here, do this, but it would just have like a story that you're not necessarily like the focal point of, but you're kind of just wrapped up in this world.
Yeah.
And
that's important.
But I would still want it to be very difficult. I would want it to be very skill based. I would want there to be like a high skill cap, so you can either be good or bad at the game. Mm-hmm. I think that's really important. Like that's something that has made I think that's what the Dark Souls series like rests on, is the fact that you can be bad at them. You can be bad at a Dark Souls game. Like if Tyler, our roommate, if he jumped on your PlayStation 4 and wanted to PvP me in Dark Souls 3, he would maybe beat me 0 out of 20 times. Yeah. I can probably say.
Just because he's never played it before.
Because he wouldn't be good at it at first. You know what I mean? It's not like you can't just like jump into like you can jump into like Kingdoms of Amalur and just mash the attack button and just win and kill enemies and be good at it. But if you take a brand new person, throw them into the Boreal Valley, like Ithiel of the Boreal Valley, and be like, all right, just go through this zone, they would die over and over and over and over, and they'd be like, I don't know. Even if you had a character that was up to level and had abilities and shit,
if they're not familiar with
that type of game, good
how
at
to play it,
so kind of getting back into it, like I would want it to be anime based. I would want it to have really like when it did have cutscenes or anything like that, I would want them to be like hand drawn. like
That'd be
an
cool.
actual anime. And I would want it because they couldn't make your character hand drawn because you're customizing your character. There's no way they could do that. But like if I don't know how they would do it, but it would be cool if it was like a hand drawn thing. And I would want the story like you were saying. I think it would be really cool if there were factions and you could choose kind of like covenants in Dark Souls, but like these
More
are
fleshed out.
But like I've always wanted a Dark Souls game where like there's an area where you aren't in combat. Like I think it like okay, so you go back to Firelink Shrine. It's basically like the typical RPG trope of like going back to town and selling your stuff, right? Like going to the different shops and like basically they simplified it down to all of your shops are right here and there's nothing else going on. All you got to do, here's where you level up, here's all your shops, here's where you rest, and that's it. But I think it would be cool and it would be a really essential, in my opinion, part of the world building to have a town that you go back to that is peaceful. There's not there's not enemies there. There's just regular NPCs and you can put away your weapon and you can go into the shop and you can
find out things about the story.
You can learn little
steal
tidbits.
Some things from
maybe,
townsfolk.
Maybe steal from townsfolk. Maybe find extra tidbits of the story and it would be really helpful in world building.
Talk to a cat.
Like you could really build a really cool story like that. And I think it's a shame that we haven't really seen that yet. And I think that there's
seen the beginning of it. I feel
the genre is in its infancy right now, and I think we're gonna see some really cool things happen. And I just hope that we do. Like, I've always for some reason in a Souls game, I've always wanted to be able to like go out and like do my fighting or whatever, but then like be able to sheath my sword and walk around and like go somewhere where I'm not going to be in combat all the time. Like, I want the combat to be there. Don't get me wrong. I want there to be the respawning enemies. I want there to be this, like, level of difficulty. But I also want it to be like, all right, like, I've got all my souls or whatever your currency is.
Dark
and
Souls,
you're like,
your world's dying. And it would be fun to play a Dark Souls game where the world's living.
Alive, but in turmoil. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you maybe see, like, civilians. Like, you'll see, like enemy NPCs like killing civilians at some point, and you can have the option to step in and if you're good,
get that in Skyrim. You get those options. You get
but
those
the
in
combat
The Witcher,
isn't
but it's not the same.
Good.
But I mean, you get all those options, so it's like
I want these ideas and these
open
things
world like that
applied to the Souls formula, where like in a way that makes sense, and like if you're quick enough and fast enough and you're good enough, like maybe the odds are really stacked against you. Like maybe it's a scenario like they would throw this at you like in the first, I'm saying like a million times, but pardon me guys,
happens.
Right. Like you're thrown into a scenario like in the beginning of the game and there's 3 Black Knights and they're surrounding a little merchant guy and they're about to kill him. But if you're good enough and you can kill those 3 Black Knight, the equivalent of what a Black Knight would be in this other game, kill him, then it unlocks this merchant for you, and that like hooks you up early game, and you can like make a buddy, or like you can go out and depending on the things you do, it'll bring different merchants back to your town or whatever, instead of just having like, here's your shrine handmaiden, here's your Andre, like you have only select few merchants, but it's like depending on the choices you make, you would get different NPCs that would be your allies or your enemies.
Yeah.
And if you made enemies with the wrong NPCs, it could make your life really tough. Or if you make friends with the right one, it can make your life way better. Mm-hmm. You could have, ability to access better weapons earlier, or like you would find out maybe a piece of information that's super helpful and like gets you to like the ability to fast travel sooner or something.
All that stuff, yeah.
Also, another thing I would like to see in the game, if it was like an open world-ish type game, some sort of mount system where you would only really need to, or you only really could use it if you had to like traverse. There was like open areas, kind of like in The Witcher, where it's like there's like the no man's land kind of area where it's like this is just like there could be random like enemies there, but it's basically just emptiness. It's basically just like a empty forest with just like some enemies in it, and you could like
maybe a witch living in the forest, or
and you could like just you could discover things, but you could also like get different mounts and stuff like that, or like your character could like, depending on your path and what you level, like you could either like have like a fast run, like kind of like some characters do in anime, or like you could jump through trees, or you could like have a nimbus cloud or something like that, or
That'd be
like
cool.
you could ride like a giant cat or something, and like I don't know. I just think there's a lot of possibilities out there for really cool games.
Yeah, it's like it's almost like you want almost what an MMO has, but with the Souls formula. Because I'd love to see arenas in my Souls game, whatever it is. Like me and you can go into an arena. We'll be on a team. We don't hurt each other at all, and we fight another 2 people.
Yeah,
something like that.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Fucking awesome.
And it's still the same combat, and and you could build your characters out specifically to like support each other if you wanted to.
Yeah.
If you could be good or bad at it. You could have 2 people
Absolutely.
who are like, I have my sword and shield, and we're both gonna go in there and wreck them. But it's like, all right, you're a caster. I'm a super tanky build where I'm wearing heavy, like I'm wearing my
I'm not gonna let
Havels,
anyone get to you.
and I'm gonna just go up there and I'm gonna just like be swinging a giant club around, but you're gonna be behind me like shooting like soul arrows at them and stuff. And they would get
It'd be
wrecked.
so much fun.
And you could have different builds, different like teams and stuff, and it would work differently.
Oh yeah, it'd be a lot of fun.
I just think that like anime, like you can really tell. Obviously, like Souls is influenced by Berserk a great deal.
Yeah.
And that's anime and manga, and you can see the influence. And I
Absolutely.
think that's where a lot of the magic kind of comes from. And I mean, it's credit to Miyazaki for having awesome influences, I guess, and
For sure.
kind of taking those influences and twisting them and using them in the way that he sees fit. And he's made amazing games doing that. I think I would just like to see more of that anime influence directly in the game. Like I want to be able to make my main character with crazy spiky hair and have him have like blue hair for whatever reason, or you know what I mean, like and you can make your character have blue hair in Souls, but it's just not, it doesn't look like an anime character. It doesn't look like it makes sense in that world, you know what I mean?
I feel that.
But yeah, man, I think it would be really
That'd
cool.
be super cool.
Like
I'd play it for sure.
Dude, it would be awesome. Like I've always wanted like a Full Metal Alchemist game too. That was just like an open, like it didn't have to. I'd be cool if it had like a Souls like system in it.
Yeah.
But I always thought it would be cool if there was some way you could play a Full Metal Alchemist game, but it's like an open world and you like run around a Mestris and you can like use alchemy to like
you can pick what kind of alchemist you are off the start.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And you can make your own character and use like the ground to like propel you forward and like do like big jumps and stuff like that, and kind of get a little bit more out there than the super groundedness of the Souls series, you know?
Yeah, that's what makes it so good though.
It is, but I think that there's possibilities out there. You know what I mean? I think that there are things that you can do with this formula that would transfer really well to other styles of game design and gameplay.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense. I just think the combat system just would work, is just better than any other combat system there's ever been for a third-person action RPG.
I couldn't agree more. That's why I like it so much. That's why I can keep playing it. That's why the PvP is still fun, and it's still fun to go build your characters too.
Because for some reason, when I hear the words action RPG, immediately in my mind, I think mainstream. I think
Devil May Cry.
I think Devil May Cry. I think easy. I like
Devil May Cry.
I think shallow when I hear action RPG.
I mean, not all of them are super easy, but it's usually just but
it's like
a little bit of
combos
HP and they have a ton of HP. And, and it's
but,
just not the same.
But it's like, the thing about Souls is you have to know how to build your character the right way.
Mm-hmm.
You have to know where to invest your stats. You have to know what weapons go good with the way that you're investing stats. What infusions work best with that weapon, work best with what buff, work best with what arm. You know what I mean? There's layers on layers of things that make your character weaker or more powerful.
Yeah, and depth is important.
And then there's the gameplay where you can get good at it. You can learn to read people and parry people. It's anything but shallow, and it's bringing depth to a genre that hasn't really seen much of it before Souls came along. And I don't know if we'll see that same level of depth in these other Souls-like games that are coming out soon. Yeah. I think that they'll be really fun and challenging, but I don't think that any of them will have the longevity.
I want to know when we're gonna get our next freaking Star Wars game. We've got the movie. They're going to try to capitalize on it.
There's 3 Star Wars games in production right now.
Yeah, but
one of them
I
is
haven't
being
barely seen anything about them though. You know
one
what I
is
mean?
being created by the team that did Titanfall.
Okay.
One of them is being created by the team that did Dead Space. And the third one,
that could be cool.
The third one, I don't know who's doing it, but I get the feeling it's going to either be like a VR experience or it's going to be something a little bit less meaty, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
A little bit more mainstream, a little bit more more shallow than the other games. Hopefully, I don't know.
Yeah.
I pray that we get like a Knights of the Old Republic, like open world Jedi RPG. Like,
yeah, that would be amazing.
If people would just realize,
Cannot
like,
wait.
just give people a health bar and a stamina bar to manage in any third person action RPG, it's just gonna work out.
It's gonna help a lot.
It's just gonna work out better than if you don't. Like,
Yeah.
any game I play now where I can just mash a button and just attack infinitely, I'm just like, this is dumb.
Mm-hmm.
What's the point?
It doesn't
like,
feel the same.
This is dumb. Like,
Yeah.
my character should have limitations that I have to work around
Yeah.
and manage to make my character survive. You know what I mean?
I do. I'm just daydreaming about how freaking cool it would be to have that Star Wars game, that
Right.
open world Star Wars game with a Souls-like combat.
That would be cool.
That would be my second ideal.
Dude, we could honestly talk about this.
That could be a whole video.
We could
talking about what a Star Wars game
We could
would
talk
be.
about this all day, but sadly, our time is up. Guys, thanks for watching. We really
Thank you so
appreciate
much.
all of your support. And we will be back next week with episode 7 of Soulscast. Thanks for watching, guys, and as always, praise the sun.
Praise it.
Praise it.